Welcome to Arms Control 101. This series offers a basic introduction to nuclear arms control. We will trace arms control's evolution across its history and look at its core concepts and functions. This first module examines key milestones in arms control theory and history to explore what it is and the common forms it takes in practice.
We are living in the 8th year of the atomic age. We are not the only nation that is learning to unleash the power of the atom. A third world war might dig the grave not only of our communist opponents, but also of our own society.
Following the conclusion of World War II, the United States sought to grapple with strategic effects of thermonuclear weapons, while competition with the Soviet Union intensified and both sides grew their nuclear weapons stockpiles exponentially. In 1950, the United States and the Soviet Union had less than 300 nuclear weapons between them. By 1960, that number would rise to more than 20,000. As the devastating potential of war rose, scholars and strategists understood that nuclear weapons would revolutionize the way we understand and avoid war between nuclear-armed superpowers. From this change in thinking came two distinct but complementary concepts: nuclear deterrence and nuclear arms control. American strategist Bernard Brodie was among the first to capture the essence of nuclear deterrence, noting that without the fear of substantial retaliation, nuclear weapons would promote aggression. The primary purpose of nuclear deterrence, therefore, was to maintain a state of equilibrium. Both sides would deter the other from launching a first attack, out of concern that the benefits of attacking would be overshadowed by the tremendous costs of doing so. The first decade of nuclear scholarship presented strategists with a problem. On the one hand, there was nothing to prevent states from racing to grow their nuclear arsenals in an endless pursuit of advantage against one another. On the other hand, the nuclear genie was out of the bottle, and failure to compete in the nuclear realm could create real vulnerabilities for states. States needed a middle path option, one that locked in the deterrent value of nuclear weapons without risking a destabilizing arms race. Among the groups of scholars and strategists who tackled this problem in the early years of the Cold War, perhaps none is more famous than the 1960 Harvard-MIT study group that informed Thomas Schelling and Morton Halpern's seminal work, Strategy in Arms Control. In this work, Schelling and Halpern describe arms control as all the forms of military cooperation between potential enemies in the interest of reducing the likelihood of war, its scope and violence, if it occurs, and the political and economic costs of being prepared for it. Though this definition was written over 60 years ago, it still rings true today. When we break this definition down piece by piece, we can get a remarkably complete picture of the types of arms control agreements that states engage in and their reasons for doing so. First, let's explore who engages in arms control agreements by unpacking the phrase "between potential enemies." Some arms control agreements are bilateral agreements, such as those made between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and with Russia in the decades since. Bilateral arms control agreements are implemented between two states, particularly concerned with each other's arsenals, and are usually tailored to balance the specific deterrence relationship between the two parties to the agreement. Other arms control efforts are multilateral, involving 3 or more parties to the agreement. As states including the United Kingdom, France, and China acquired nuclear weapons during the Cold War, they engaged in multilateral efforts to uphold international norms against proliferation, testing, and nuclear use. Some multilateral agreements also include states that do not possess nuclear weapons. In 1963, U.S. President John F. Kennedy predicted the world could have as many as 25 additional nuclear weapon states in the coming decade.
Personally, I'm haunted by the feeling that by 1970, unless we're successful, there may be 10 nuclear powers instead of 4. By 1975, 15 or 20.
In 1968, the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty was signed. The treaty sought to halt and eventually reverse JFK's prediction, and to this day requires non-nuclear weapon states to maintain their non-nuclear status while obligating nuclear weapon states to work towards general and complete disarmament. Today, other multilateral agreements, both formal and informal, help to ensure the security of nuclear materials and facilities, and sets guardrails for the global introduction of new technologies that impact nuclear security, stability, and potential escalation risks. The phrase all forms of military cooperation suggests the wide variety of modalities that arms control agreements can take. Formal treaties are the most prominent form of agreement, from bilateral agreements to multilateral treaties. But other agreements begin as more informal understandings between leaders. Near the end of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union committed to limit and reduce their arsenals of non-strategic nuclear weapons through a series of individual but consecutive public statements. These unique agreements were known as the Presidential Nuclear Initiatives, or PNIs. Formal agreements later followed to reinforce their stipulations. What kinds of military cooperation did these agreements include? Some arms control measures involve changes in existing conditions, such as requiring parties to dismantle certain types of weapons or remove them from certain geographic areas. The 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, or INF Treaty, for example, committed the United States and the Soviet Union to eliminate an entire class of intermediate-range nuclear weapons from their respective arsenals. European allies to the Soviet Union and the U.S. felt especially vulnerable to these capabilities, and the INF Treaty eased those mutual fears. Other agreements may prohibit the parties from developing a particular kind of system in the first place. For example, the 1972 Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty limited the ability of the U.S. and the Soviet Union to deploy defensive systems against adversary ballistic missiles. Arms control can also regulate new and emerging technologies at their intersection with nuclear weapons. These technologies can produce unexpected effects for all sides, potentially leading to miscalculation, nuclear escalation, or upsetting strategic stability. For example, the 2023 Political Declaration on Responsible Use of AI and Autonomy was an initial effort to set norms around the development, deployment, and use of military artificial intelligence. Arms control agreements play an important role in creating open communication and transparency between adversary militaries. For example, many treaties contain verification provisions that allow the parties to inspect portions of one another's forces. Other transparency measures, commonly found in treaties, include exchanges of data on the location or makeup of nuclear forces, or advance notice of certain activities like troop movements or missile tests that could be otherwise misinterpreted by another state. The most important reason why states pursue arms control is to reduce the likelihood of war. Arms control can eliminate potential friction points between nuclear-armed adversaries, including by restricting the number of state and non-state actors that possess nuclear weapons. Arms control can help maintain conditions of strategic stability, whereby states eliminate incentives for nuclear use on both sides. Take the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty that we discussed earlier. Why would an arms control treaty place limits on purely defensive systems? Well, strategists feared that such systems would put pressure on both sides to drastically expand their arsenals to match the other's defenses, or risk losing their ability to respond and therefore deter an adversary nuclear attack. Agreements don't have to place limits on specific weapons in order to help reduce the risk of war. During the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, a series of miscalculations by both the United States and the Soviet Union ratcheted up tensions to the brink of nuclear war. After the crisis, they established the Hotline Agreement, which created a direct line between their respective leaders. Both sides hoped that such an arms control endeavor would enhance communication to prevent further crises or misunderstandings from inadvertently escalating into war. While arms control agreements are often premised on preventing nuclear war via deterrence, they can also set out to reduce the potential destructive effects of such a war. For the common good, states codify agreements aimed at restricting competition in domains where conflict would disadvantage both the aggressor and the target state. For example, the 1967 Outer Space Treaty prohibits parties from putting weapons of mass destruction in orbit or elsewhere in space. Since the detonation of a nuclear weapon in outer space could produce a host of negative military and civilian consequences for all sides, the treaty restricts states from waging war in this domain. There is another major reason states pursue arms control: to lessen the political and economic costs of competition in the nuclear realm. Agreements that curtail countries' nuclear arsenals can reduce monetary costs associated with building, maintaining, and deploying weapon systems. Arms control can also help avert expensive arms races by preventing competition in certain domains. Arms control can also produce favorable domestic and international political outcomes. Governments can gain valuable political capital by addressing domestic concerns over the potential risks and costs of nuclear weapons. Arms control can also bolster their international reputation and build support for their other foreign policy priorities. The 1963 Partial Test Ban Treaty, for example, prohibited the Soviet Union, United States, and United Kingdom from initiating nuclear explosions in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. This helped reduce negative environmental and public health effects from atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons, which was a major concern among global publics. Some arms control agreements have tied limits on states' nuclear weapons capabilities with other positive inducements. Through the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the United States lifted economic sanctions on Iran in return for certain limits on its nuclear program. This module traced through a series of key developments in the theory and practice of arms control to explore what arms control is and why states engage in it. Building on this introduction, the next few modules will explore contemporary challenges and opportunities for arms control. In the next video, we dive into the essential relationship between arms control and deterrence in U.S. nuclear strategy. Join us in our next Arms Control 101 module and subscribe to CSIS to stay updated on all things international security.